The primary system we used to have was, it was kind of a closed system. If you were registered as an independent, you could request a Democrat ballot, press Republican, but other than that, registered Republican or Democrat, that's who you voted for in the primary. The way it got changed now is through a ballot initiative. The bill passed. It's kind of an open primary system. It's more, called the Louisiana primary system, kind of based on how Louisiana does it. And what happens is every candidate, no matter what party, Republican, Democrat, Green, Natural Law, all of them will be on the ballot for June, and the top 2 vote getters will be on the ballot for November.
So it's not going to be one Republican and one Democrat? It could be 2 Democrats?
Could be 2 Democrats, it could be 2 Republicans, could be Democrat, Republican, could be Republican or Green Party. It all depends on what happens in June.
Now, okay, explain to me a little bit about the voting process in June. We have to be registered voters.
Yep.
Okay, and is it a mail-in or do we go in to vote? I mean, like to a polling place?
I believe it'd still be through a polling place.
Okay, and after the June election, we only have from June until November to decide what's going to happen?
I believe so.
So it's kind of like rounding the bend in that racetrack.
Yeah.
Kind of really start rooting for your favorite horse.
Yeah, one of the conventional arguments for using this kind of system is that it saves time, it saves resources, You're saving all the money in the paper, printing up voters' guides. I think the real drawback is it's kind of limiting your choices. I mean, sure, you got all the candidates there on the ballot in June, but come November, you only got those 2 choices. Say if you're a diehard member of the Green Party, you might be out of luck come November because your candidate's probably not going to be on the ballot, considering how few votes they get.
Well, tell me a little bit about the Green Party. I've never heard of them before. What are they, and who are they?
Green Party is it's mostly centered around environmental rights. It encompasses a lot of what's called the liberal or progressive left, things like gay rights, pro-choice, again, environmental kind of issues. And
are they the people that would be considered like tree huggers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it would be kind of a little bit derogatory to say it that way, kind of pigeonholing them. But in general, yeah, it would be, tree huggers, hippies, that kind of. That's how Fox News would characterize them.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's probably where I heard that from. As Douglas
Makes
and I were
sense.
talking about the communications.
Mhm.
It's interesting how we hear things over and over, and then we start using it in our own daily language.
Yep.
So what would be the opposite of a Green Party person?
For lack of a better idea, I'd say maybe the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party actually encompasses a lot of different ideas. It could be anybody who is, very pro-business, very pro-free markets, to somebody who's advocating legalizing drugs, taxing them, regulating them, legalizing prostitution and regulating them, and sometimes all 4 of those and many other things wrapped into one. To me, they're kind of complementary. It's
The Green Party to the Libertarian?
Yeah, they kind of, they mesh together well. They would probably work together well in elected government. Because really, they're both about the same thing, and that's having more choice and more freedom to do as you want without any kind of, regulations or government interference. I'd say the Green Party, though, would have a fair amount of government regulation just as far as it concerns the environment or social issues, making sure everybody has the same rights under the law.
Now, there's the Green Party, the Libertarian, Republican, Democrat, but I think there's one more, isn't there?
There's the Constitution Party, I believe. That's what they're called. I'd say they're kind of a little bit more to the right.
More than the Libertarians, or not quite as far as the Libertarians?
I'd say a little bit more than the Libertarians. They're very much, family values, very conservative, very conservative on social issues. I think that pretty much sums them up pretty well.
Who are your favorites for the primary?
For the Republicans.
Okay.
Okay.
For across the board.
All right. I think it's kind of, it's really wide open right now. I think Romney or Paul has a good shot in Iowa. Uh, Romney will probably take New Hampshire. And for the rest of the primaries, I think it's, it's up for grabs. The lead has changed so many times in the past several months. It's gone from Bachman to Perry to Kane, and Kane dropped out. Then, Romney is always there taking the lead again once somebody falls. Then it went to Gingrich. He started dropping in the polls. Went to Paul, and now Santorum's kind of, jumping out there, taking third, second in some polls. I read in a recent editorial somebody suggesting this could be the first brokered convention in quite a while. And that's where nobody really comes out clear ahead in any of the primaries. Everybody has a certain amount of delegates, but not enough to win. So all the guys in the party have to kind of come together and hash it out and decide who's going to be the nominee. And a lot of deals will probably be made in that scenario.
Kane dropped out. Mm-hmm. Do you see Michelle Bachmann dropping out as well? Because she's not quite as active as she was even just a few weeks ago.
I would think if she doesn't do too well in Iowa, anything less than 7%, I think she would probably drop out. I don't know if she would. She might try and soldier on. She might stick it out through New Hampshire, but if she doesn't do too well in Iowa, that would probably be the end of her campaign.
Does Iowa kind of set the theme for the elections?
Yeah, good 6 months before the Iowa primary, it's, back and forth. This is probably the most debates I've seen before the actual caucus. And, Iowa is really make or break for a lot of people.
Why? Why is that so important there?
It could just be the way the media is run. It's once they started really, covering the election, the caucuses and the primaries, it started becoming a big deal. It was right around 1980, the Carter and Reagan campaigns, where Iowa really started to jump out ahead and become kind of the trendsetter. That's any number of a handful of candidates running those 4 years is made or break in Iowa. Some of them will fall off, some of them will get a big boost. Like Howard Dean in 2004 was considered the front runner for the Democrats. Come Iowa, when he shows forth, it was kind of the downward spiral of his campaign.
And how do you see the media covering this time's election cycle, this year's election cycle? Do you think they're being fair or not?
I think they're being fair insofar as every candidate so far has had, their shot at the top. But their shot at the top of the polls can almost, at least half of it can be attributed to just, the media. Back in, I believe it was June or July, was the Ames, Iowa straw poll. And usually that's kind of a bellwether for the candidates too. I remember Tim Pelotny dropped out after placing very badly in that. But that's the one where Michelle Bachmann scored the victory, and that was her top at the pack. Ron Paul placed second. However, in the news coverage, the big story was Michelle Bachmann becoming a top tier candidate, and I believe it was that Romney and Gingrich were bringing up third and fourth, I believe, but they were kind of skipping over the fact Ron Paul placed second, which I don't think anybody was expecting.
Do you think that that's because Ron Paul is not a favorite?
I would say he's not a favorite of, the media or the Republican establishment. But the, Republican establishment isn't known to always pick, the best representative of their ideals or the best representative of who the party regulars would like.
How so?
I would say, a good example was 1964 when Barry Goldwater got the nomination. It was a kind of a swing to the hard right for the time. And they kind of learned their lesson with that one, is not to go that hard to the right. He got portrayed as, an extremely aggressive, warmongering type of person by Lyndon Johnson. Another good example would be 1996 when Bob Dole was Republican nominee. Really strong conservative credentials, but he was also seen as the safe, he probably has the best shot. And they kind of sidelined Pat Buchanan during the primaries during that election. because he was seen as, more extreme, more alienating to, large swathes of the American public.
How do you see McCain with Palin?
You mean as in McCain
Do you think
picking Palin?
Yeah, do you think that he was, speaking of history, do you think that he was a hard writer? Do you think he was kind of like, we'll just let this one slide?
McCain always had a kind of reputation for, going his own way. And he had the Maverick tag applied to him. He would buck Republican orthodoxy if he felt it was necessary, say as in campaign finance reform. Unfortunately, by the time he started to run for president, he felt the need to, swing back to the right to capture the nomination. So he had to start appealing more to the type of voters who are going to show up for the caucuses and primaries, switching some of his positions. And by the time it came to pick his vice president, he's running against Barack Obama, first African-American nominee for the Democrats. He's got to do something, kind of psych up his base, and part of that would be picking Sarah Palin. If he had picked somebody like Tim Pawlotny, John Kasich, Evan Baia, he's not going to get too much excitement going for his campaign. It's just going to be a couple of, one old white guy and probably another middle-aged white guy. He picks Sarah Palin, he's getting a lot of media attention. He's riling everybody up, and he had some problems after picking her that his campaign should have foreseen. But I don't really see McCain having any other choice than to pick Sarah Palin. That was the only way I think he could, gain momentum and kind of last-ditch effort, really. I think.
Do you think that Saturday Night Live played a part in him losing the election?
I don't think it played a part in him losing the election. I think both him and Palin kind of did that to themselves. But I think what Saturday Night Live did was kind of, put a face to Sarah Palin for those people who aren't watching the news or maybe, seeing her interviews. The people who saw Saturday Night Live are apt to say that Sarah Palin said something like, I can see Russia from my house, when in fact she, never said, I can see Russia from my house. She said something to the effect of, there's parts of Alaska where you can't see Russia. Her actual statements concerning Russia and Alaska and foreign policy were, didn't make her look that great. But Saturday Night Live made her look even worse by satirizing it. And unfortunately, people remember the Saturday Night Live statements, but not her actual campaign statements.
Do you see any kind of comedy, Jay Leno or Saturday Night Live or Conan O'Brien playing a part in this election cycle with their jokes about the politicians?
Yeah, I think any one of those shows could play a part. It all just depends on, the year and who has the best jokes. 2008, it turned out to be Saturday Night Live. I remember back in '92, Letterman and Leno, back when Leno was still kind of funny, but, they had an effect. And The Daily Show keeps playing more and more of a role in elections.
Yes, I noticed that. It's with Jon Stewart, I believe.
Yep, Jon Stewart, and The Colbert Report, too. A lot of young people are getting their news from, The Daily Show. One of my friends just said the other day, election's coming around, I better start watching The Daily Show to keep up with what's going on. And it makes me kind of cringe. I mean, it's a funny show. You can learn things from it, but I don't think it should be your one source of news.
Well, it's kind of filtered down through comedic writers as well. I mean, nothing against comedy or, their writing ability, but sometimes it is slanted in the direction of the network on which it airs as well.
Oh, yeah. Jon Stewart likes to say he's not biased. Well, it's kind of untrue to say that there is a definite bias to a show, but then again, it's also a comedy show, so you got to kind of expect that. I think there's, any news show is going to be biased in one way or another. I don't see any way that anybody can be completely unbiased.
It's extremely hard being in the media to be unbiased because you're bombarded so much with information from this side, information from that side, and then your own personal opinion. It's very hard to be unbiased and report the news in a neutral journalistic fashion.
Yeah, as part of one of my school classes, I actually did a report on The Daily Show. And there was a few studies where reporters stated, watching The Daily Show made me rethink my profession and how I approach the news. And that maybe trying to be that objective and that neutral was causing the people reading the news or watching the news to kind of miss out on some information that they otherwise wouldn't.
I know it's great to be neutral, but sometimes people need that shock factor too, to kind of wake them up. Speaking of news shows and shock factor, you have a radio show that's going to be starting soon.
That's right.
And that's going to be starting, I think, the 17th of January?
16th through 17th.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that.
Me and my brother have been producing for our friend Chauncey Curls a show for the last several years. Man, he's a really talented guy, really, upbeat, energetic, passionate about news, politics, culture. And, he's fallen on hard times. He is always having some kind of problem. And we're really hoping this time he really turns it around, shows up on time, gets there on time, isn't drunk or something, hopefully. And yeah, we'd really like to help him out. This is his big dream, to be a big radio superstar, but despite his best efforts, he keeps, he's just that close, and we're really hoping this time he makes it.
Well, what has he done in the past? Is he like a freelance reporter? Is that what he is?
Yeah, you can say he's a freelance reporter. He has done news updates before. He had his own show on a few small radio stations. There was always some kind of complication, and he'd have to leave. And even when he's not working at an actual station, he's recording his own news updates, recording his own interviews, keeping everything for posterity. So he's always trying to do this. So we hope that this works out for him.
Kind of going off the topic of politics here for a minute, but Lucille Ball, recorded her shows. She was the first one to record live TV shows. And of course, thereafter, other people did. And thankfully, we now have TV land and we can see the syndicated shows. It sounds like that's the same thing that he's been doing for years, that he's been recording his shows. And like you say, for posterity's sake. And then, maybe we'll hear some of those shows on your show.
I believe so. There's a few that he wants to get out there that he feels hasn't been heard as much as it should.
And what is going to be the theme?
He's going to talk about things in politics, current events, culture, things he sees about town he doesn't like. There's a lot of things he doesn't like that are probably going to come up.
And you and your brother are doing this, right?
Yep, we're helping him out, getting all the equipment set up, producing the show for him, keeping track of all the little details that he always seems to miss.
We'll have to have you back after it goes live and see how it's going for you.
All right.
I wanted to talk about Occupy Wall Street for a minute. There is a movement here going on in Modesto, Occupy Modesto. And I've been doing some research on Facebook, and it seems like as many as there are cities, there are Occupies. And not just here in the United States. There's Occupy Tokyo. I mean, there was a huge post on Facebook the other day about Occupy Tokyo and things that are going on over there. Belgium, Amsterdam,
Rome is a big one.
All over the world. What is the movement? This started, I think, on September 17th. Yeah, I was going to say 7th, but it was 17th in 2010. And was it 2010 or 2011?
2011.
I'm already 1 year off. It's like I'm thinking this is January 2nd, 2011. It's already 12. What started it? And why has it taken off so quickly in just a matter of a few months?
A big catalyst was the bank bailouts from 2008, 2009. A lot of money spent propping up financial institutions that may or may not, have either needed it or, deserved it. We have this free market system we like to tout a lot. When it comes to these banks, they donated a lot of money in the presidential campaign to both McCain and Obama.
The banks did?
Yeah. Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, all these places heavily involved in, financing campaigns.
So is that why they got bailed out? Because they got their guy elected?
You're probably never going to find, a written statement, saying I did this for you, so please do this for me. But it's, you can draw that conclusion, especially when so many people working in the Treasury Department. Tim Gaither, our Secretary of the Treasury, used to work for Goldman Sachs, or the Federal Reserve. It's one of those two. A lot of people from Goldman Sachs and Federal Reserve in and out, going back and forth, working in the Securities and Exchange Commission or the Treasury Department. Kind of almost a, coyote watching the hen house kind of scenario. So when these financial institutions are involved in what I think basically amounts to securities fraud, defrauding their own investors, lying to their clients, a lot of stuff that's, illegal at best and unethical at best, illegal at worst. When these kind of places do that and then require a bailout just to keep in business, I think we're moving away from the free market we claim to cherish, and I just plain don't understand it. And I think that's a big catalyst for what Occupy Wall Street started as. And then as it spread from New York to Boston, all over the globe, it just started encompassing so much of the things that are happening nowadays. The widening gap between incomes, wealth disparity. I know in Europe, they're dealing with austerity measures in several countries, bailing out entire countries. And social services and public servants' pensions are getting cut, those kind of things. And a lot of that, too, is stemming from, the banks in Europe are just as bad as the ones over here. And a lot of people are upset about, these guys are breaking the law, or at best just running their businesses badly. How come so much money is being spent propping them up, and then, the taxpayer is left holding the bill?
In show business, what happened with Occupy Wall Street is what the performers call a 35-year overnight success. So it sounds like the Occupy Wall Street, which started this past September, actually started quite a few years ago, and it's been gaining momentum.
There's a lot of issues involved in the Occupy movements that have, they've been around for years. It's just now they're starting to get a little bit more screen time, I guess.
Do you think that anything horrible is going to happen to the protesters more than the pepper spray at UC Davis?
I would hope not. I don't see anything like that happening in the near future. I think in countries that are, less stable and more dealing with the effects of austerity and budget cuts, like Rome and Greece, Syria, which is dealing with its own problems, I don't think it's not as connected to the Occupy stuff as just having to live in Syria, I'd say. But those places, I would say, are going to deal with a lot more, violence, a lot more unrest, and hopefully it doesn't get to that here.